The late morning sun filtered through the high windows of the local shooting range, casting long shafts of light across the worn concrete floor. The air smelled faintly of gunpowder and oil, mingling with the subtle scent of sweat and leather from the shooters gathered there. Emily Torres stepped inside, her boots echoing softly as she moved toward the registration desk, a deliberate calmness in her stride. At 24, she was younger than most of the regulars here, but she carried herself with a confidence that was unmistakable. As she approached the counter, a group of men clustered near the entrance exchanged quick, sideways glances, their whispers barely concealed. They were clad in typical shooting range attire. Tactical vests, ear protection slung around their necks, and baseball caps pulled low to shield their eyes. Their faces were a mixture of skepticism and barely disguised amusement as they watched Emily. One of them, a tall man with a grizzled beard and a faded tattoo snaking up his forearm, nudged the man beside him and nodded toward Emily. The younger man smirked, shaking his head slightly as if to say, "Watch this." Their eyes lingered on her slender frame, the way her hands rested lightly on the counter, and the serene steadiness in her gaze. "Hey, little lady," the bearded man called out, his voice laced with mockery. "You sure you're in the right place? This ain't a tea party." His tone was loud enough to draw attention from others nearby, casting a ripple of chuckles through the crowd. Emily didn't flinch. Her dark eyes met his with quiet resolve. "I'm here to practice. What's the problem?" Her voice was measured, neither confrontational nor timid, just firm. The younger man stepped forward, a sneer curling his lips. "Practice? With what? A BB gun? This is serious shooting. You gotta have some muscle to handle the real deal." He glanced around as if expecting others to back him up, but most kept their expressions neutral, waiting to see how she'd respond. Emily's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. "I'm more than capable. Just point me to a rifle and some targets." She tapped a finger lightly on the laminated range rules posted beside the counter, a subtle reminder that everyone here was bound by the same regulations, regardless of size or gender. The bearded man scoffed, crossing his arms as if to shield himself from the embarrassment he sensed creeping in. "You sure you know what you're doing? This isn't a game." His tone was a challenge wrapped in condescension. A few others nearby chuckled, the sound a mix of disbelief and derision. One of them, a stocky fellow with a thick neck and a sharp jawline, leaned in conspiratorially. "Bet she's here for the free lessons or something. Bet she can't even load a magazine." Emily's gaze didn't waver. She reached into her backpack and pulled out a small notebook, flipping it open to reveal neat, precise notes and diagrams of firearms, ballistics data, and shooting techniques. She glanced up briefly to meet the eyes of the crowd, letting the contents speak for her. Murmurs rippled through the group. The younger man's smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of uncertainty. Others shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware that she might be more knowledgeable than they'd anticipated. Ignoring the swirling tension, Emily turned back to the range officer behind the counter, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. "I'd like to check out the M1A, Emily said, her tone casual but confident. The officer raised an eyebrow but nodded. "You sure you can handle it? That rifle kicks hard." Emily met her gaze steadily. "I'm familiar with it. I'll take it." Behind her, the group of men exchanged glances, their earlier smirks replaced by thinly veiled doubt. The bearded man muttered under his breath, "Gotta see this to believe it." As Emily moved toward the equipment racks, the crowd's chatter grew louder, a mix of disbelief and curiosity. The men whispered among themselves, their voices dripping with skepticism. "Bet she's all talk. Watch her miss the first shot. Shouldn't let her near that thing." Emily ignored the noise, focusing instead on selecting her gear with practiced efficiency. She checked the rifle's weight, balanced it in her hands, and adjusted the sights with a precise touch. Her fingers moved with the confidence of someone who had spent countless hours training, not just reading about guns. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly as she carried the rifle to the firing line. The men who had been so quick to judge now watched in silence, their earlier bravado replaced by a quiet anticipation. A few younger shooters who had been on the sidelines edged closer, their expressions a blend of surprise and respect. Emily set up her position, her movements fluid and deliberate. She adjusted her stance, grounding herself with steady feet and squared shoulders. Around her, the ambient noise of the range, the sharp cracks of gunfire, the murmur of distant conversations, the metallic clinks of casings hitting the floor, faded into the background. Her focus narrowed, honing in on the target's downrange. From behind her, the bearded man scoffed again, louder this time. "All right, let's see what you got, kid." His voice carried the weight of a challenge, but it was tinged with a nervous edge. Emily didn't respond. She raised the rifle, aligning the sights with practiced precision. Her finger hovered gently on the trigger, steady as a metronome. The first shot rang out, sharp and deliberate, echoing through the range. The bullet struck the target squarely near the center. A ripple of startled murmurs passed through the crowd. The bearded man blinked, momentarily speechless. The younger man's mouth opened, then closed, as if searching for a retort that wouldn't come. Emily lowered the rifle, her expression calm but unyielding. "Your turn," she said quietly, her tone a quiet invitation and a subtle assertion all at once. The men exchanged uneasy glances. The challenge had been issued, and the dynamic of the room had shifted palpably. No longer was she the outsider to be mocked. She was a contender, forcing them to reconsider their assumptions. The sun continued to climb higher, illuminating the range and the gathering crowd. For Emily Torres, this was just the beginning. A moment charged with condescension and disbelief, but also the quiet promise of proving herself beyond the limits others imposed. The atmosphere was heavy with anticipation, the air thick with the unspoken tension of those who had underestimated a young woman poised to defy expectations. The silence that followed Emily's first shot was thick, as if the entire range had momentarily held its breath. The cluster of men who had been so quick to dismiss her now exchanged uneasy looks, their earlier confidence wavering in the face of her unexpected skill. Whispers rippled through the crowd, a mix of disbelief and reluctant curiosity. The air, once heavy with condescension, shifted subtly, charged now with a quiet tension born of uncertainty. Emily, sensing the change but remaining composed, didn't lower the rifle completely. Instead, she glanced up and spoke with a calm, steady voice that cut through the murmurs. "I'd like to try the M40 next." The request hung in the air, deliberate and measured. It was a name that resonated differently here, one that carried weight among those familiar with precision shooting and military-grade weaponry. The mention of the M40 drew several heads to turn, the younger men who had been so certain now exchanging furtive glances, some with eyebrows raised in mild surprise. The bearded man, who had been the loudest skeptic, narrowed his eyes and stepped forward, lips curling into a skeptical smirk. "M40? You sure you know what you're talking about? That's a sniper rifle, not a toy." Emily's gaze met his without hesitation. "I know exactly what it is, and how to use it." The range officer behind the counter, a woman named Linda with years of experience etched into the lines around her eyes, studied Emily for a moment. There was a flicker of recognition in her gaze, an unspoken acknowledgement of the young woman's competence. Without a word, she nodded and moved toward the equipment racks. Emily followed, her movements deliberate but unhurried. As Linda retrieved the M40 from its secured case, the spectators trailed behind, their earlier dismissiveness replaced by an intrigued silence. The rifle was sleek and formidable, its matte finish absorbing the light, barrel long and precise. Emily lifted it carefully, testing its balance with practiced ease, a subtle smile touching her lips. "Looks like you've handled one before," Linda remarked, her tone now respectful rather than wary. "I've trained with it," Emily replied simply. The men shifted, some exchanging glances that spoke of grudging respect. The younger one, call him Mark, stepped closer, curiosity edging out his previous skepticism. "So what's your story? Military background?" Emily's eyes flickered briefly, but she gave no direct answer. Instead, she turned toward the firing line, positioning herself with confidence. The crowd followed, forming a loose semicircle around the benches, their chatter subdued. She settled into a stance, but of the rifle snug against her shoulder, cheek resting lightly on the stock. Her hands steady and sure, adjusted the scope with a precise touch. The murmurs of the crowd faded further as she centered her focus on the target's downrange, small silhouettes set at varying distances. "First target," she announced softly, "at 300 yards. A hush fell over the spectators as she exhaled slowly, her finger brushing the trigger. The shot cracked sharply, echoing off the walls. The bullet struck dead center, the target's bullseye marked with a neat, dark hole. A ripple of surprise swept through the crowd. The bearded man grunted, an involuntary sound betraying his astonishment. "Not bad," he muttered. Emily didn't pause. She adjusted the scope slightly and aimed at a smaller, more distant target. Second shot, 450 yards. The tension in the room thickened. The younger shooters leaned forward, eyes wide, as the sharp report rang out again. The bullet hit close to the center, a near-perfect shot that drew a few impressed nods. "You're good," Mark admitted, his voice low, almost grudging. Emily allowed herself a brief nod but said nothing. She moved smoothly to the next target, a challenging silhouette partially obscured by a simulated obstacle. Third shot, 500 yards, partial cover. The crowd watched, silent now, as she took careful aim. The shot rang out, the echo lingering longer than before. The bullet struck the exposed portion of the target, precise and unerring. The bearded man's lips pressed into a thin line. "Okay," he said slowly. "You've got skills." Emily lowered the rifle and met his gaze evenly. "I'm not here to prove myself to you. I'm here to practice." Her words landed with quiet authority, the kind that brooked no argument. The crowd shifted, some exchanging glances that bore a new respect. The atmosphere, once charged with mocking disbelief, now hummed with a grudging acknowledgement of her expertise. Linda stepped forward, breaking the silence. "Emily, right? You're more than just a casual shooter." Emily nodded slightly. "I've spent time with the Army Marksmanship Unit. Trained extensively." A ripple of recognition passed through the crowd. Some faces softened with understanding, others with surprise. The bearded man's smirk faded, replaced by a tentative respect. Mark, emboldened, spoke up. "That explains a lot. You've got the kind of skill most of us only dream of." Emily's expression remained composed. "Skill comes from training and focus, not dreams." The men seemed to absorb this, some nodding slowly. The dynamic that had dominated the morning, the condescension, the sneering disbelief, was giving way to something more complex. The crowd was no longer quite sure how to categorize the young woman who had, with quiet confidence and undeniable skill, disrupted their expectations. A few younger shooters approached Emily, their voices low but respectful. "Mind if we watch your next round?" one asked. She regarded them evenly, then nodded. "Be my guest." As the next series of shots rang out, precise and controlled, the atmosphere in the range transformed. What had begun as a scene of skepticism and subtle hostility was now charged with focused attention and a budding respect for the woman who had so thoroughly challenged the assumptions of those around her. The range officer, Linda, watched from the sidelines, her eyes thoughtful. She had seen many shooters come and go, but there was something different about Emily. Something that went beyond mere proficiency. It was a quiet strength, a calm assurance born of experience and discipline, woven with a subtle thread of mystery. Emily, for her part, remained focused on the targets ahead. The subtle shifts in the room around her were noted but did not distract her. She was here for one purpose: to hone her skills, to push herself further, and to prepare for whatever lay ahead. The murmurs and glances, the judgments and the newfound respect, they were all part of a larger story, one she was only beginning to reveal. And as the afternoon light streamed through the windows, casting long shadows across the range, Emily Torres stood steady, a figure of quiet determination amidst the shifting tides of perception. The firing line hummed with quiet anticipation as Emily adjusted the scope on her M40, her fingers deft and steady despite the faint tremor she'd learned to control over years of practice. The targets lay downrange, rows of steel plates, paper silhouettes, and small bullseyes, each one a test of skill and focus. Around her, the crowd of shooters and onlookers had grown, their earlier skepticism now replaced by a keen interest, their eyes tracking her every move. Emily's stance was firm, her feet planted shoulder-width apart, weight balanced with precision. She exhaled slowly, steadying her aim, and the sharp crack of the rifle echoed through the range. The bullet struck the center of the first target, a crisp, perfect hit that drew a nod of approval from Linda, the range officer. Mark, standing just behind the firing line, exchanged a glance with the bearded man, who now wore a grudging respect in his eyes. "Not bad for a rookie," Mark muttered, loud enough for Emily to hear. She didn't respond, instead shifting her focus to the next challenge. A moving target set on a mechanized track, simulating a more dynamic shooting scenario. The target zipped across the range at an unpredictable speed, forcing shooters to anticipate its path and timing. Emily's eyes tracked the target smoothly, muscles taut with concentration. Her first shot rang out, clipping the edge of the target. The crowd murmured, sensing the increased difficulty. She adjusted her aim, timing her breath with the target's movement, and fired again, this time a clean hit. A ripple of impressed murmurs spread. The bearded man grunted, shaking his head in disbelief. "Looks like she's got the hang of it." Emily allowed herself a brief smile but remained focused. The shooting challenges continued, each more demanding than the last. Smaller targets at further distances, partial cover simulations, multiple rapid shots requiring precision and speed. With every shot, she demonstrated remarkable control, blending technical skill with calm composure. The atmosphere shifted gradually from quiet curiosity to engaged respect. Skeptical whispers gave way to open admiration as Emily effortlessly met each challenge. The men who had once mocked her now stood silently, their expressions a mixture of grudging acknowledgement and surprise. Linda stepped forward, her voice carrying clear over the range. "Emily, you're exceeding expectations. Most shooters here struggle with the moving targets and long-distance shots, but you're hitting them dead center." Emily nodded, acknowledging the praise without arrogance. "Years of training," she said simply. Mark approached cautiously, a tentative admiration in his voice. "What's your secret? How do you stay so steady under pressure?" She considered the question briefly before answering. "Focus. Breathing. Controlling the mind as much as the body. It's about discipline, not just talent." Her words seemed to resonate. The group fell silent, absorbing the depth beneath the simple statement. The bearded man, usually blunt and brash, offered a rare, sincere comment. "You've got the kind of discipline that separates the good from the great." Emily's eyes flicked toward him, her gaze steady. "Discipline is what keeps you alive." The crowd's mood deepened as she prepared for the next round. A series of long-distance shots at irregular intervals, designed to test her endurance and precision under fatigue. She moved with methodical grace, each breath measured, each shot deliberate. The targets blurred slightly as the range's lighting shifted with the afternoon sun, but Emily's focus didn't waver. She leaned into the challenge, muscles taut but controlled, eyes narrowing with intent. The rifle's report cracked sharply with each shot, bullets striking the paper targets with unerring accuracy. One by one, the targets fell, the scores accumulating with precision that left no room for doubt. The crowd watched in near silence, the tension palpable. Even the most hardened shooters found themselves drawn into her performance, their earlier cynicism replaced by awe. Linda called out the scores, her voice tinged with admiration. "Perfect hits on every target so far. Incredible." Emily allowed herself a brief pause, wiping a bead of sweat from her brow. The challenge was far from over, but each success fortified her resolve. She glanced back at the men who had doubted her. Some avoided her gaze, others met it with a newfound respect. Mark stepped closer, a hint of humility breaking through his usual bravado. "You're making us all look bad," he admitted, half joking. Emily's smile was faint but genuine. "It's not about making anyone look bad. It's about doing your best." The bearded man grunted in agreement. "You've got the skills, but more than that, you've got heart." Emily absorbed the compliment silently, then focused once more on the targets. The final test was a compound drill, a combination of rapid-fire, moving targets and long-range precision, designed to push the limits of any shooter's ability. The range seemed to hold its breath as she took her position. Her breathing slowed, heartbeat steady, eyes sharp. The first rapid shots hit their marks with effortless speed. She transitioned smoothly to the moving targets, each shot precise and controlled. Finally, she adjusted for the long-range target, compensating for wind and distance with practice calculation. The last shot rang out, striking the bullseye dead center. The room erupted, not in mockery but in genuine applause. The men who had jeered earlier now clapped with respect, some nodding appreciatively. Linda smiled, stepping forward once more. "Emily, that was extraordinary. You've shown remarkable skill and control." Emily lowered her rifle and met the eyes of the crowd, her expression calm but resolute. "Thank you. I'm here to get better. To push my limits." The bearded man, now clearly impressed, approached her. "You've got what it takes. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Emily nodded, the faintest flicker of gratitude in her eyes. Around her, the atmosphere had transformed completely. What had begun as a gauntlet of skepticism and derision had evolved into a gathering marked by respect and quiet admiration. As the crowd began to disperse, some lingered, seeking advice or simply wanting to witness more of her skill. Mark approached with a tentative question. "Will you be coming back to train with us?" Emily considered for a moment. "I'll be here as often as I can." The shooting range, once a place of judgment and doubt for Emily Torres, now felt like a ground of opportunity. A space where skill and discipline spoke louder than assumptions. And as she packed away her gear, the murmurs of respect following her steps, Emily knew this day was the first step in a new chapter, one where she would continue to prove, not just to others but to herself, the strength that lay beneath the surface. The applause reverberated through the shooting range, a sound so unexpected and genuine that it seemed to unspool the tension that had gripped the room since Emily Torres had arrived that morning. Faces that had once twisted with doubt now softened with awe, their eyes reflecting a mix of astonishment and newfound respect. No longer was she the young woman dismissed as inexperienced or out of place. She was a sharpshooter whose skill silenced the crowd. Emily lowered her rifle slowly, the weight of it familiar and comforting in her hands. Her breathing remained steady, her posture relaxed but purposeful. The faint tremor she had long learned to conceal was negligible now, buried beneath layers of focus and resolve. As she stepped back from the firing line, the murmur of voices swelled around her, but this time the tone was different, less mocking, more inquisitive. The bearded man, who had been the loudest skeptic and source of derision, now wore an expression that bordered on reverence. He cleared his throat and stepped forward, his voice carrying a rough edge softened by genuine respect. "I gotta admit, Emily, I didn't think you had it in you. You hit every target like you were born for it." Emily met his gaze evenly, a subtle smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I've had plenty of practice." Nearby, Mark nodded in agreement, his earlier bravado tempered by the weight of her performance. "You just shut us all up. Hell, you made some of us look like amateurs." The crowd's laughter was warm, inclusive rather than derisive, a marked shift from the skepticism that had hung in the air just moments before. Emily's eyes scanned the faces around her, men and women alike, some still gripping their rifles, others leaning casually against the walls, all now sizing her up with a newfound appreciation. Linda, the range officer, approached with a measured smile. "Emily, that was extraordinary. You've got precision, control, and the kind of composure that's rare to see. Most shooters here would struggle to match you." Emily inclined her head slightly. "Thank you. I'm here to improve, not just to impress." Her humility only deepened the respect she commanded. The room, once a crucible of doubt, now felt transformed, charged with an energy that came from witnessing true skill and dedication. Suddenly, a ripple of chatter from the far corner caught everyone's attention. A man in a sharp military uniform stepped through the entrance, his presence commanding immediate silence. General Marcus Hale, a figure known for his decorated service and formidable reputation, surveyed the scene with keen eyes. His gaze settled on Emily, and for a moment, the room seemed to hold its collective breath. The general approached the firing line with purposeful strides, his expression unreadable as he stopped before Emily. He snapped to attention, a gesture that surprised many in the crowd. "Sergeant Torres," he said firmly, his voice carrying authority and respect. Emily's posture straightened, her eyes meeting his with recognition and a hint of deference. "General Hale," she replied crisply. The crowd shifted uneasily, sensing the weight behind the exchange. General Hale's presence altered the atmosphere, elevating the moment beyond the confines of the shooting range. His reputation as a leader and mentor was well known, and his acknowledgement of Emily spoke volumes. The general turned to the assembled shooters and spectators, his voice steady and commanding. "Emily Torres is one of the finest marksmen I've had the honor to train. Her skills have saved lives in the field and inspired countless others. Today, she reminded us all that true expertise transcends age, gender, and expectation. A hush fell over the room. The men who had doubted Emily earlier now looked away, their earlier mockery replaced by silence and shame. Some shifted uncomfortably, others nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of the general's words. Emily's gaze returned to the crowd, calm and unwavering. "I'm not here to boast," she said quietly, "but to remind everyone that skill and dedication matter most. We all have something to learn." The general's eyes softened slightly as he regarded her. "Well said, Sergeant. And well demonstrated." He stepped back, allowing the crowd to respond. Applause erupted anew, this time deeper and more heartfelt. The men who had once jeered now clapped alongside the others, their faces marked by a mixture of respect and contrition. Linda approached Emily, handing her a freshly printed schedule of upcoming training sessions. "We'd be honored to have you train with us regularly," she said. "Your presence would elevate everyone here." Emily accepted the schedule with a nod. "I'll be here." Mark lingered nearby, his voice low but sincere. "If you ever want to share some tips, I'm all ears." Emily's smile was faint but genuine. "I'll consider it." As the crowd began to disperse, the atmosphere remained charged with the transformation that had occurred. What had started as a scene of doubt and dismissal had evolved into a moment of collective recognition and respect. The shooting range, once a battleground of judgment, now stood as a place where skill and character were honored. Outside, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot, the day's warmth lingering in the air. Emily gathered her gear, her movements deliberate and unhurried. The tremor in her hand, a reminder of battles fought and scars borne, was no longer a weakness but a testament to resilience. As she prepared to leave, General Hale approached once more, his voice lowered but earnest. "Emily, there's a mission coming up that requires someone with your expertise. It's sensitive, demanding, exactly the kind of challenge you're suited for." Emily met his gaze, the faintest flicker of intrigue igniting behind her calm exterior. "Tell me more," she said. The general nodded, a knowing smile touching his lips. "In time." With that, he turned and strode away, leaving Emily standing amid the fading light, poised on the threshold of a new chapter. The crowd had witnessed the rise of a sharpshooter not just skilled, but formidable in presence and spirit. And as Emily stepped out into the evening, the respect she had earned lingered like a quiet promise, one that would shape the days to come. The shooting range had quieted considerably, the last echoes of gunfire fading into the early evening as shadows stretched across the concrete floor. Emily Torres stood near the exit, her gear packed with methodical care, the weight of the day settling like a familiar cloak over her shoulders. The earlier applause and murmurs of respect still resonated faintly in her mind, but now her focus shifted, sharpened by the presence that had just left the building. General Marcus Hale's departure left an unmistakable imprint, a gravity that pulled the room's energy taut, and then released it into something far more significant than mere recognition. The man was a living legend in military circles, his career marked by strategic brilliance and an uncanny ability to recognize talent when he saw it. He had approached Emily not just as a sharpshooter but as a trusted protégé, a connection forged through shared battles and silent understanding. As Emily stepped outside, the cool air greeted her like a breath of clarity. The hum of distant traffic mingled with the rustle of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. The parking lot was nearly empty, save for a few cars and the faint glow of streetlights flickering on for the night. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, a message from an unknown number. She glanced at the screen. Asterisk meeting at 1900 hours. Location: undisclosed. Come prepared. Asterisk. A subtle smile curved her lips. The invitation was unmistakable, a summons that carried the weight of urgency and trust. She pocketed the device and walked toward her car, her mind already shifting gears to the mission hinted at by General Hale. Later that evening, Emily found herself in a discreet, windowless conference room tucked away in a government building few knew existed. The walls were lined with digital maps, satellite images, and classified documents that flickered softly under the dimmed lights. General Hale entered, his presence commanding immediate attention. He moved with the same purposeful stride she had witnessed earlier, yet there was a quieter intensity in his eyes now. "Thank you for coming," he said, voice low but firm. This isn't your usual assignment, Emily. It's delicate, critical, and requires the highest level of skill and discretion. Emily nodded, folding her hands in front of her. I'm ready. The general gestured to a large screen illuminating the room. A map of a remote mountainous region appeared, dotted with markers and coded symbols. Intel suggests that a high-value target is operating in this area. Our previous attempts to locate and apprehend have been unsuccessful. We need someone who can operate with precision, stealth, and tactical expertise. Emily studied the map, her mind already piecing together the terrain, the challenges, the variables. What's the target's profile? Armed, well-trained, and deeply embedded with hostile elements. Extraction is complicated by the terrain and local support networks. We need surgical strikes with minimal collateral. The general's words were crisp, but the underlying urgency was unmistakable. Emily's gaze lifted, meeting his with unwavering resolve. I understand. What's my role? You'll lead the reconnaissance and sharpshooting teams. Your expertise in long-range engagement and field tactics will be crucial. This mission requires not just accuracy, but strategic thinking and the ability to adapt on the fly. A photograph appeared on the screen beside the map, a blurred image of a man with cold eyes and a hardened expression. This is the individual we're after, known to orchestrate attacks and evade capture through a network of safe houses. Emily's jaw tightened. The face was unfamiliar, but the stakes were clear. What's the timeline? Immediate. We don't have the luxury of delay. Your team will assemble within 48 hours. The room was silent except for the hum of the projector. Emily's thoughts raced, weighing the risks and the implications. She had trained for moments like this, yet the weight of responsibility was immense. General Hale broke the silence. I know this isn't easy, Emily, but you're the best we have for this. Your skills have saved lives before. Now they're needed again. Emily's voice was steady, laced with determination. I won't let you down. He nodded, a brief flash of pride in his eyes. Good. We'll provide all the support you need. Intelligence, logistics, backup. As the meeting concluded, Emily gathered the briefing materials, her mind already mapping out strategies and contingencies. Outside the room, a young officer approached, handing her a sealed envelope. For you, Sergeant. From the Operations Command. She opened it to find detailed dossiers on her team members, their specialties, backgrounds, and readiness status. Faces she recognized and some she didn't, but all chosen with care for the mission ahead. Back in her apartment later that night, Emily laid out the documents on the kitchen table. The soft glow of a single lamp cast shadows across the papers, the weight of the mission settling deeper into her consciousness. The tremor in her hand, a relic of past battles, pulsed faintly, a reminder of her limits and her resilience. Her phone buzzed again. A message from General Hale. Trust your training. We're counting on you, asterisk. She stared at the screen, feeling the gravity of those words. This was more than a mission. It was a test of everything she had become. The quiet strength she had cultivated through years of discipline and sacrifice now stood poised on the edge of action. Emily closed her eyes briefly, drawing in a steadying breath. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with danger and shadows. But she was ready. As dawn approached, she began preparing her gear with meticulous care. Rifles cleaned and sighted, ammunition checked and double-checked, communications equipment calibrated. Each item was a thread in the fabric of her readiness, woven tightly with experience and resolve. The night deepened around her, but inside a fierce light burned steady. Emily Torres, once underestimated and dismissed, was now entrusted with a mission that could change everything. And as she secured her pack and glanced once more at the dossier, the quiet promise in her eyes was unmistakable. She would face whatever came with unwavering resolve. The day at the shooting range had marked her emergence. Tonight, in the shadowed quiet before the storm, she stood ready to step into a new battle, one that demanded not just skill, but courage, loyalty, and unyielding determination. The morning light spilled through the wide windows of the local shooting range, casting a pale glow over the polished benches and gleaming racks of firearms. The atmosphere was palpably different from the previous day, where skepticism and whispered doubts had once lingered. A newfound respect filled the air. Conversations hummed with a quieter tone, marked by interest and cautious admiration rather than dismissive laughter. Emily Torres arrived just as the range manager, Linda, was finishing a briefing with the staff. The moment Emily stepped into the room, the chatter dimmed, replaced by nods of acknowledgement and subtle smiles from those who had witnessed her earlier demonstration. Her presence now carried a weight that transcended age and gender, a recognition of skill and determination that had reshaped the collective mindset. Linda approached her with an open smile, placing a hand briefly on Emily's shoulder. "Good to see you back, Emily. The team's been talking about you all morning. Your performance really changed the tone around here." Emily returned the smile, her eyes calm but resolute. "I'm glad to hear that. There's a lot of talent here. I'm just happy to be part of it." The group gathered near the registration counter had grown to include a diverse mix of shooters, seasoned veterans, enthusiastic newcomers, men and women alike, each eager to learn and improve. The range had become a place not just for practice, but for community, driven by a shared respect for the craft. Today, the shooting range was instituting a new policy, one Linda was about to announce. "Starting now," she said, addressing the assembled crowd, "we're committed to fostering an environment of inclusivity and respect. Everyone here deserves a chance to learn and excel without judgment or prejudice." Murmurs of approval rippled through the group. The men who had once exchanged mocking glances now nodded in agreement, many offering tentative smiles to Emily as a symbol of solidarity. One of the older shooters, a grizzled man named Frank, raised his hand. "I'll admit I was wrong to judge so quickly. Seeing what Emily did yesterday, it opened my eyes. This place feels different now, and that's a good thing." Emily stepped forward, her voice steady and warm. "Thank you, Frank. It's important that we all support each other, no matter where we're starting from. Shooting is about discipline and respect, and that includes respecting each other." The crowd responded with a collective hum of agreement. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of renewal and possibility. In the following hours, Emily took on a new role, not just as a shooter, but as a mentor. She moved among the range visitors, offering guidance on technique, sharing tips on stance and breath control, and patiently answering questions. Her presence was magnetic, drawing people in with her quiet confidence and genuine kindness. Mark, the younger man who had once doubted her, approached hesitantly. "Hey Emily, mind if I pick your brain about long-range shooting? I want to get better." Emily smiled, nodding. "Of course. Let's take a look at your form." Together, they moved to an empty firing station. Emily observed Mark's posture and grip, gently correcting subtle flaws. Her instructions were clear, concise, and encouraging. As Mark absorbed her advice, a noticeable improvement took shape in his stance and aim. Nearby, Linda watched with satisfaction. "You're making a real difference here," she said quietly. Emily paused, glancing around at the range bustling with activity. "It's more than just shooting," she said softly. "It's about building confidence and breaking down barriers." Throughout the day, stories began to emerge. Accounts of shooters who had faced similar doubts and obstacles, now finding encouragement in the changed environment. Veterans with stories of hardship and resilience shared nods of understanding with newcomers, eager to prove themselves. The range that had once echoed with dismissive laughter now resonated with camaraderie and shared purpose. Emily's influence was evident not just in the improved technique of those she guided, but in the subtle shifts in attitude and demeanor among the regulars. As afternoon deepened, a small group gathered around Emily, listening intently as she recounted lessons from her military marksmanship training. Her voice was calm but passionate, weaving technical detail with the human elements of discipline, focus, and perseverance. The bearded man from the previous day, now a quieter figure, spoke up. "I never thought I'd learn something new from a woman half my age. You've earned my respect." Emily met his gaze with a steady nod. "Respect is earned through actions, not assumptions." The group chuckled softly, the tension between them dissolving like mist. The barriers that had separated them seemed to crumble under the weight of shared experience and mutual recognition. As the day wound down, Linda gathered the staff for a final meeting. "This is just the beginning," she said firmly. "We're committed to maintaining this culture of respect and continuous improvement. Emily's example has shown us what's possible when we open our minds and hearts." Emily stood nearby listening. The tremor in her hand, a subtle reminder of her past, felt lighter amid the support surrounding her. The day's events had transformed not only the shooting range, but also the people who inhabited it. Before leaving, Mark approached once more. "Thanks for today. I'm going to keep training, and maybe one day I'll be as good as you." Emily smiled warmly. "Keep at it. Skill grows with patience and persistence." As she stepped outside into the cool evening air, Emily felt a quiet satisfaction. The shooting range was no longer a place of judgment and exclusion. It had become a space of growth, respect, and community, a reflection of the very principles she stood for. The journey ahead remained uncertain, filled with challenges both seen and unseen. But here, among allies and newfound friends, Emily Torres found strength renewed. The day's transformation was a testament to the power of humility, courage, and the willingness to see beyond appearances. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the range, a sense of hope lingered. A promise that the barriers broken today would pave the way for a future where everyone could stand tall and be seen for who they truly were. The quiet hum of the shooting range was replaced by the muted buzz of whispered conversations and hurried footsteps, as word of General Marcus Hale's visit spread through the tight-knit community like wildfire. Emily Torres had become more than just a skilled shooter. She was now a symbol, a living testament to the power of discipline, resilience, and quiet strength. Yet beneath the surface of respect and camaraderie lay an undercurrent of anticipation, a sense that her journey was far from over. That evening, as the last rays of sunlight kissed the horizon, Emily found herself seated in a nondescript conference room within a secure military facility. The sterile walls were adorned with digital maps and encrypted communication devices, their glow casting a cold light over the gathered team. General Hale stood at the head of the table, his presence commanding the room with an unspoken authority. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he began, his voice steady and resolute. "We're facing a critical situation that demands our utmost attention and expertise." Emily leaned forward, her eyes fixed on the general. She had expected this moment, yet the weight of responsibility pressed upon her like the barrel of a rifle, precise, unyielding. "The target," Hale continued, bringing up an image on the screen, "is a high-value individual deeply entrenched in hostile operations within a remote region. Previous attempts to neutralize this threat have failed due to the terrain and the target's extensive network." A murmur of acknowledgement rippled through the room. The assembled operatives, handpicked for their skills, exchanged glances, each understanding the gravity of the mission ahead. "You, Sergeant Torres," Hale said, locking eyes with Emily, "are being tasked with leading the reconnaissance and precision engagement teams. Your marksmanship and tactical acumen make you the ideal candidate for this operation." Emily's jaw tightened, the familiar surge of adrenaline mingling with a sense of solemn duty. "Understood, sir. What's the timeline?" "Immediate." Hale's gaze didn't waver. "We have less than 72 hours to mobilize and deploy. The success of this mission hinges on speed, stealth, and surgical precision." The room fell into a focused silence, the kind that precedes action. Emily's mind raced, already cataloging the variables: the rugged terrain, unpredictable weather, potential hostiles, and the lives depending on their success. Hale continued, "You'll be supported by a select team of operatives, each with specialized skills: reconnaissance, communications, combat medicine, and close-quarters tactics. Coordination and adaptability will be essential." A dossier was slid across the table toward Emily, containing profiles of her team members. Faces stared back, seasoned professionals, some familiar, others unknown. The weight of leadership settled heavier as she scanned the details. "Any questions?" Hale asked, his tone firm yet encouraging. Emily straightened, resolve hardening. "What's the extraction plan if things go sideways?" Hale nodded approvingly. "We have contingencies in place, including aerial support and ground extraction teams positioned at strategic points. But our priority is to avoid detection and engage only when absolutely necessary." The briefing continued, detailing intelligence reports, communication protocols, and the mission's objectives. Maps highlighted choke points, safe houses, and potential escape routes. Every detail was scrutinized, every scenario contemplated. As the meeting concluded, Hale fixed Emily with a final, piercing look. "Emily, this mission will test everything you've trained for. Trust your instincts, rely on your team, and remember, the lives of many depend on your success." Emily nodded, the weight of his words settling deep within her. "I won't let you down, sir." Later, alone in a quiet corner of the facility, Emily reviewed her gear with meticulous care. The rifles were cleaned and sighted, ammunition packed and double-checked. Communication devices hummed softly, their signals encrypted and secure. She moved through the motions with practiced precision, each action a thread woven into the fabric of readiness. Her phone buzzed, a message from General Hale. "Trust your training. We're counting on you." Emily's fingers hovered over the screen before she replied simply, "Understood." Outside, the night air was crisp, carrying a hint of anticipation. The tremor in her hand, a lingering echo of past battles, was momentarily forgotten as focus sharpened into clarity. She allowed herself a brief moment of calm before the storm. The mission ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, filled with dangers both seen and unseen. Yet Emily Torres stood ready, not just as a marksman, but as a leader forged through discipline, resilience, and unwavering resolve. As the hours dwindled toward deployment, the weight of the imminent operation settled over her like a silent vow. The path ahead was fraught with peril, but she was prepared to face it head-on, carrying with her the strength of those who had come before and the unyielding will to succeed. The quiet before the storm was over. Now the real test began. The hum of the transport helicopter filled the cramped cabin as Emily sat strapped into her seat, the dull vibration thrumming through her bones. Outside, the rugged mountain terrain unfolded beneath them, jagged peaks shrouded in mist, dense forests clinging to steep slopes, and narrow valleys carved by rushing streams. The landscape was both breathtaking and unforgiving, a perfect hideout for the target they were pursuing. Emily's gaze was fixed on the shifting scenery, but her mind was elsewhere, focused on the mission briefing and the weight it carried. Earlier in the dimly lit operations center, she had reviewed the dossier that revealed a truth she hadn't expected. A former teammate, Sergeant Marcus Rook Callahan, previously listed as missing in action, might still be alive and held captive within the hostile network they were infiltrating. The revelation had hit her like a shockwave beneath the surface. Rook had been more than a comrade. He was a brother-in-arms, a steadfast ally whose disappearance had haunted her since deployment. The possibility of his survival added a new dimension to the mission, one threaded with hope, urgency, and a deeply personal stake. Beside her, Lieutenant Sarah Kim, the team's communications specialist, glanced over with a tentative smile. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Emily nodded, forcing a calm she didn't entirely feel. "As ready as I'll ever be." The team's leader, Captain Jason Myers, stood near the cabin's rear door, reviewing tactical maps on a tablet. His eyes flicked toward Emily. "We're approaching the drop zone. Conditions are rough, but the intel's solid. We'll move fast and stay sharp." Emily adjusted her gear, checking the sight on her modified M110 sniper rifle. Every piece was calibrated for precision, every detail accounted for. The tremor in her hands, a faint reminder of old wounds, was suppressed beneath layers of muscle memory and mental discipline. The helicopter dipped lower, skimming the tree line before settling in a narrow clearing barely large enough for the blades to turn safely. The team disembarked swiftly, the crunch of boots on gravel sharp in the stillness. The forest swallowed their movements as they melted into the shadows, each step deliberate and silent. Emily led the reconnaissance squad, her eyes scanning the dense undergrowth and uneven terrain. The weight of responsibility pressed on her shoulders, but her focus was unyielding. Every rustle, every distant bird call, every shifting shadow was catalogued in a mental map of threats and opportunities. As they neared the suspected compound, the air grew heavy with tension. Surveillance drones had confirmed the presence of armed guards and sophisticated security measures. The team split into smaller units, each tasked with specific objectives: disabling communications, securing perimeter points, and locating hostages. Emily's heart pounded as she positioned herself in a concealed vantage point overlooking the main building. Through her scope, she spotted movement, armed sentries pacing the perimeter, their patrol patterns predictable yet vigilant. Her radio crackled softly. "Team Alpha, this is Emily. Confirmed enemy patrols. Recommend wait for optimal engagement window." Lieutenant Kim's voice responded swiftly. "Copy that. Holding position." Time stretched thin as Emily watched, calculating wind speed, distance, and trajectory. The mission stakes were clear. One wrong move could endanger hostages, including, potentially, Rook. Suddenly, a flicker of movement caught her eye. A figure slipping from the shadows, hands bound, guided roughly by two guards. The helicopter's rotors sliced through the crisp mountain air as it banked away from the hostile compound, the fading silhouette of their extraction point shrinking beneath them. Inside the cabin, tension was slowly giving way to a tentative relief, but Emily Torres remained vigilant, her eyes scanning the terrain through the reinforced windows. The mission had shifted dramatically, from a calculated operation to an urgent rescue, and the weight of that transition pressed heavily on her. Beside her, Sergeant Marcus Rook Callahan leaned back against the bulkhead, his breathing shallow but steady. Bruised and battered, his face bore the marks of captivity, yet his eyes held a spark of resilience that had not been extinguished. Emily caught his glance, the unspoken bond of shared hardship passing silently between them. Captain Jason Myers broke the silence, voice low but firm. The extraction was successful, but we're not out of the woods. We have intel suggesting a secondary network still active in the region. The threat is far from neutralized. Emily nodded, her mind already racing through the possibilities. The mission's scope had expanded, and with it the challenges ahead. What's our next move? Myers tapped a few commands on his tablet, bringing up a detailed map of the area. We regroup at the forward operating base. From there, we'll coordinate with intelligence to dismantle the remaining cells. Rook's debrief will be critical. Rook shifted, wincing slightly. I've got information that could change the game, he said, voice hoarse but determined. Names, locations, people still out there. Emily's expression hardened. Then we act fast. We can't let them regroup or retaliate. The helicopter's rhythmic thrum was punctuated by the crackle of radio communications, as the team coordinated with ground units and command centers. Emily's role had evolved from sharpshooter to strategist, a leader tasked with navigating the delicate balance between aggression and caution. Upon landing at the base, the team moved swiftly through secured corridors toward the debriefing room. The sterile environment contrasted sharply with the chaos they'd left behind, yet the stakes remained unchanged. Inside, a panel of intelligence officers and commanders awaited, eyes sharp and expectant. Rook began his report, detailing the network's structure, key operatives, and potential safe houses. His information was precise, born of months of captivity and observation. Emily listened intently, her tactical mind weaving the pieces into a coherent picture. As the briefing concluded, General Marcus Hale entered, his presence commanding immediate attention. His gaze settled on Emily and Rook, a mixture of pride and urgency in his eyes. Excellent work, he said, voice steady. But the mission is far from over. We have a narrow window to strike before the enemy disperses. Emily stepped forward, voice resolute. We'll deploy reconnaissance teams to verify intel. Then we move decisively. The general nodded. You have full command of ground operations. With the weight of command now fully upon her, Emily convened her team in a secure planning room. Maps and satellite images covered the walls, each marked with annotations and potential targets. Time is critical, she began. We can't afford mistakes. Rook's intel gives us an advantage, but we must remain adaptable. Expect resistance, and prepare for rapid extraction if necessary. The room was silent, every member absorbing the gravity of the task. Lieutenant Sarah Kim spoke up. We'll coordinate real-time communications and drone surveillance to monitor enemy movements. Emily acknowledged the plan. Good. Our objective is to dismantle the network swiftly, minimize collateral damage, and secure any remaining hostages. As preparations advanced, Emily's thoughts drifted briefly to the shooting range where her journey had begun, the place where doubt had met determination, and skill had silenced skepticism. Now that same resolve fueled her leadership. Before deployment, Emily sought out Rook in the medical bay. He was sitting quietly, bandaged but alert. She pulled up a chair beside him. You held on, she said softly. Rook met her gaze, a faint smile breaking through the weariness. Because I knew someone would come. Emily's voice was firm but kind. We finished this mission together. No one gets left behind. He nodded, the unspoken vow strengthening their bond. The following days unfolded in a blur of precision strikes and coordinated maneuvers. Emily's team moved through dense forests and rugged hills, engaging enemy operatives with calculated force. Her sharpshooting skills were pivotal, neutralizing threats before they could endanger the unit. Communication was constant, adjustments made on the fly as new intelligence emerged. The operation tested every ounce of training, every ounce of courage. At one point, Emily found herself covering a squad pinned down by hostile fire. Her shots rang out, each one deliberate and precise, buying the team precious seconds to regroup. The mission's climax came as they approached the final stronghold, a remote compound fortified with traps and armed guards. Emily led the assault, coordinating entry points and sniper overwatch. The clash was fierce but swift, and when the dust settled, the network lay dismantled. In the aftermath, Emily stood amid the echoes of battle, the weight of loss and victory intertwined. The team gathered, battered but unbroken, their faces etched with exhaustion and relief. General Hale approached, his expression solemn yet proud. "You've done remarkable work, Emily. Your leadership saved lives and brought justice." Emily's gaze swept over her team, their strength, their sacrifice. "We did it together." This mission was about more than strategy. It was about loyalty, perseverance, and trust. As the sun rose over the horizon, casting light on the scars of the past, Emily felt a quiet resolve settle within her. The battles ahead would be no less challenging, but with her team at her side and the lessons learned etched deep, she was ready. The journey had tested her limits, forged her spirit, and reaffirmed the unbreakable bonds of those who fight not just for victory, but for each other. And as the world stirred awake, Emily Torres stood poised, ready to face whatever came next with unwavering courage and unyielding heart. The quiet hum of the morning in Emily Torres's apartment was punctuated only by the soft rustle of gear being packed and the faint creak of worn leather. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting slender lines of gold across the table where maps, notes, and carefully folded clothing lay in meticulous order. She moved with a deliberate grace, each action a ritual of readiness, a preparation not just of body but of mind. Outside, the city stirred awake, oblivious to the weight of the decisions being made within these walls. The world beyond the window was vast and unpredictable, filled with shadows and light, danger and hope. For Emily, this was the calm before another storm, one she faced with a steady heart and sharpened resolve. Her hands, steady despite the faint tremor that lingered as a reminder of battles past, traced the edges of a well-worn photograph. It was a small token, a challenge coin embossed with the emblem of her unit, symbols of sacrifice, loyalty, and unyielding spirit. She tucked it into her pocket, a talisman for the mission ahead. The phone buzzed softly on the counter. A message from General Marcus Hale. *, all eyes are on you. Trust your training. Lead with courage. *. Emily's fingers hovered for a moment before she typed back. Ready as ever. She moved to the mirror, her reflection steady and composed. The woman staring back was a composite of strength and experience, resilience etched into every line and shadow. The tremor in her hand was no weakness, it was a testament to survival, a silent echo of the battles she had fought and won. Outside, the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows that stretched into the morning. Emily gathered her gear, rifles cleaned and sighted, ammunition stacked and secured, communication devices calibrated and tested. Each piece was a thread in the fabric of her preparedness, woven with years of discipline and sacrifice. She paused at the door, a final glance over her shoulder. The apartment was sparse but filled with the echoes of a life dedicated to service and purpose. It was a sanctuary and a launching point, a place of reflection before the demands of the day pulled her into the crucible of action. The drive to the staging area was quiet, her mind reviewing strategies and contingencies. The team was assembled, ready to move on her command. Faces familiar and new looked to her with trust and expectation. The weight of leadership settled over her shoulders like a mantle, heavy, yes, but worn with honor. At the base, the atmosphere was taut with anticipation. Equipment hummed with readiness, briefings buzzed with last-minute details, and the air was thick with the unspoken understanding that every moment counted. Emily moved among her team, offering quiet words of encouragement, steadying nerves with calm assurance. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, casting a warm glow over the horizon, Emily took her place at the forefront. The mission ahead was fraught with risk, uncertainty, and peril. Yet beneath the surface there was a fierce light, a determination born of trials endured and battles won. Her finger brushed the challenge coin in her pocket, a reminder that strength was not just measured in skill or firepower, but in resilience, loyalty, and the courage to face the unknown. The first shot rang out into the fading light, precise, controlled, and unyielding. Emily Torres stood ready, a beacon of steadfast resolve in a world that demanded nothing less. The path ahead was uncertain, but her purpose was clear: to lead, to protect, and to persevere. And as the night embraced them, the mission began. A testament to the unbreakable spirit of those who stand firm when the world shifts beneath their feet, who fight not just for victory, but for the bonds that hold them together through every storm.